Beginning. The language no one was supposed to know. Most people think the most dangerous thing in space is pirates. They're wrong. The most dangerous thing in space is misunderstanding. My name is Daniel Reyes, and I'm not a soldier, diplomat, or explorer. I'm a linguistic analyst for the Interstellar Cultural Institute, a fancy way of saying I study alien languages and try to stop wars before they start. Most of my work happens in quiet offices, translating ancient symbols or comparing grammar patterns between alien dialects. But sometimes a translation mistake becomes a crisis. That's how I ended up standing in the middle of an alien throne room with armed guards pointing energy spears at my chest, and an alien queen staring at me like I had just broken the universe. The world of Atheris. The planet Atheris was beautiful in a strange, intimidating way. Vast crystal forests stretched across its continents, their translucent branches reflecting sunlight into brilliant rainbow patterns. Floating mountains hovered above glowing blue oceans, held in place by gravitational anomalies no human scientist fully understood. But despite its beauty, Atheris was tense. The ruling civilization, known as the Valkyrie, had recently made first official contact with the human coalition. Unfortunately, the negotiations weren't going well. Several diplomatic teams had already failed to establish stable communication. The Valkyrie language was incredibly complex, filled with layered meanings, emotional tones, and symbolic gestures. One wrong word could completely change the meaning of a sentence, which meant humans kept accidentally offending them. That's why the Institute sent me. Not because I was important, but because I was stubborn enough to keep studying a language most experts had given up on. Still, I never expected my first meeting with the Valkyrie ruler to go the way it did. The throne room. The Valkyrie palace rose from the center of Atheris' capital like a living sculpture. Tall, curved towers of silver crystals spiraled toward the sky. Soft energy currents flowed along the walls like glowing rivers. Inside, the throne chamber was even more impressive. The room was enormous, large enough to hold a starship. Massive pillars lined the walls, each carved with symbols that looked ancient even by alien standards. At the far end stood the throne, and on it sat Queen Valara, ruler of the Valkyrie Dominion. She was taller than any Valkyrie I had seen before. Her skin shimmered faintly with a metallic blue glow, and long strands of silver hair flowed down her back like liquid light. Her eyes glowed softly, an eerie golden color that seemed to look straight through me. Standing around her were dozens of guards, each one holding weapons that looked far too advanced for my comfort. My escort whispered quietly beside me. "Remember, speak slowly." "Right," I muttered. I stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Your Majesty," I said through the translator device attached to my collar. "I bring greetings from the human coalition." The translator converted my words into Valkyrie speech. The queen listened carefully. Then she responded. Her voice was calm but distant. The translator hesitated, then spoke. "Your greeting is acceptable. Not exactly warm, but it was better than hostile." For several minutes, we attempted a formal diplomatic conversation. Unfortunately, something wasn't working. The translator struggled to keep up with the Valkyrie language's complexity. Several phrases came out wrong. I could see irritation growing among the Valkyrie nobles standing near the throne. The queen's expression remained calm, but her eyes narrowed slightly. Then the translator made a mistake. A big one. Instead of translating a respectful greeting, it accidentally produced a phrase that meant something closer to submission demanded. The throne room exploded with angry voices. Guards stepped forward instantly. Weapons activated. My escort whispered in panic. "You insulted the queen." "I didn't mean to." The queen stood slowly from her throne. Her voice rang across the chamber. And this time, the translator failed completely. The ancient words. For a moment, everything was chaos. Valkyrie nobles shouted. Guards tightened their grip on their weapons. My translator beeped uselessly, unable to process the Queen's speech. I knew what would happen next. Diplomatic failure. Possibly execution. But something strange happened in my mind. While studying Valkyrie history, I had spent months researching their oldest recorded language, the Proto-Valkyrie dialect, used thousands of years before their modern civilization formed. Almost no one used it anymore, but fragments of it appeared in ancient texts, and as the Queen spoke in anger, I recognized something, a phrase, an old phrase. Without thinking, I spoke, not through the translator, but directly, in the ancient language, Shavath-Althara. The moment the words left my mouth, the entire throne room fell silent. The Queen froze. Completely. Her golden eyes widened in shock. Even the guards stopped moving. For several seconds, no one said a word. Then the Queen stepped down from her throne. Slowly, carefully. Her gaze locked onto me with intense focus. And when she spoke again, she spoke in the ancient language, a language older than empires. Where, she said softly, did you learn those words? My heart pounded in my chest. I studied your history, I replied, still using the ancient dialect. Murmurs spread through the throne room. Valkyrie nobles looked stunned. Most of them probably didn't even recognize the language themselves. The Queen walked closer until she stood only a few steps away. Her eyes searched my face. That language has not been spoken here for nearly 2,000 years. I know, I said. Then how does a human speak it? I study forgotten languages, I answered. It's my job. The Queen stared at me for a long moment. Then she turned to her court and spoke in modern Valkyrie. The translator finally worked again. Leave us. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers, but the guards obeyed. Within minutes, the enormous throne room was empty except for the Queen and me. The truth behind the language. Queen Valara circled me slowly, like a scientist studying a strange discovery. You must understand something, she said. That language is sacred to our people. I didn't know that. It is the language of our first empress, the one who united our species. I swallowed. Then I apologize if speaking it was disrespectful. She stopped in front of me. It was not disrespectful. Her voice softened slightly. It was astonishing. She studied me carefully. For centuries, our historians believed no outsider would ever understand those ancient words. Well, I said nervously, humans are pretty stubborn learners. The Queen actually smiled, just slightly. Then she asked the question that changed everything. Would you teach me how you learned it? The days that followed. Over the next several days, something unexpected happened. Instead of negotiations between diplomats, there were conversations between two language enthusiasts. Every day I met with Queen Valara inside a quiet library chamber filled with ancient Valkyrie texts. We compared translations, discussed grammar structures, analyzed how the ancient dialect evolved into the modern language. For the first time since humans arrived on Atheris, the Valkyrie court relaxed. Tension faded, because communication was finally happening, not through imperfect machines, but through shared understanding. One evening, after hours of discussion, the Queen leaned back in her chair. You know, she said thoughtfully, when you first spoke those words, I thought I was hearing a ghost. A ghost? Yes. She smiled slightly. Our legends say the ancient language would only return when a new era began. Sounds dramatic. My people enjoy drama. Ending. The words that changed a civilization. The final diplomatic meeting took place 1 week later. This time, The throne room wasn't filled with tension. It was filled with curiosity. Valkyrie nobles watched carefully as I stood beside Queen Valara, not as a prisoner, but as a translator. She addressed the court, then turned to me. "Would you like to begin?" I nodded, and spoke the opening sentence in the ancient Valkyrie language, Shavath Althara. The room fell silent again, but this time with respect. Then I translated the message into Galactic Common. "A new voice speaks between our worlds." Queen Valara continued the speech, shifting between modern Valkyrie and the ancient dialect. For the first time in their history, the Valkyrie Empire was speaking directly to humanity without misunderstanding. By the time the meeting ended, a formal alliance agreement had begun. Not because of weapons, not because of politics, but because of words. Later that evening, the Queen walked with me along a balcony overlooking the glowing crystal forests of Atheris. "You changed something today," she said quietly. "I just spoke a language. You reminded my people of their past," she said, "and opened a path toward their future." I smiled slightly. Funny how that works. She looked at me thoughtfully. "Will you stay on Atheris a little longer, Daniel Reyes?" "Why?" "There are still many ancient texts I wish to study with you." I laughed. "I suppose that's the safest reason anyone's ever asked me to stay on an alien planet." She smiled back. And somewhere far below us, the lights of the Valkyrie capital shimmered like a sea of stars. All because one human spoke a few forgotten words, and an alien queen froze.